The Happy Monk. Joys of the Spiritual Life. Once upon a time, there was a wealthy man from the upperclass. As he grew older, he understood that old age pain was similar for both rich and poor people. As a result, he abandoned his wealth and social status and fled to the forest to live as a monk. He meditated and worked on his mental abilities. He became content and happy after freeing himself from unpleasant thinking. His calm and kindness pulled 500 other monks to his side over time. Most monks at the time had a serious expression, but there was one monk who constantly had a small smile on his face. He never lost this spark of inner happiness, no matter what happened. Others monks would occasionally ask as to why he was so joyful and constantly wore a smile. He said, with a chuckle, "You wouldn't believe me if I told you. And it would be a disgrace to my master if you felt I spoke a lie." The wise master recognized the source of the uncontrollable happiness on his face. He appointed this happiest monk as his primary assistant. The master and his 500 followers went to the city after the rainy season, and the king allowed them to stay in his pleasure garden. The king was a wonderful man, who took his responsibilities as ruler seriously. But he never had time to be happy. King often had to make peace between his own ministers of state. His wives competed for his attention and the advancement of their sons. On rare occasions, the king has received threats from other kings. And, of course, he had to be concerned about the kingdom's finances at all times. He heard that the monks were preparing to return to the forest as summer approached. The king went to the master and said, "Considering the health and well-being, you're getting old and weak. What is the point of returning to the forest? Well, you're here, you can send your followers back to forest." The master called his assistant and stated, "Well, you all can live in the forest, you will now be the leader of the other monks. Because I am too elderly and weak to do so, I will accept the king's offer to stay here." As a result, the 500 monks went back to the forest. In the jungle, the assistant continued to meditate. He obtained so much wisdom and peace that he was more happier than he had been previously. He was missing the master and wished to share his joy with him. So he returned to the city for a visit. He sat at master's feet when he came. They didn't talk much, although the assistant would occasionally comment, "What a happiness! What a happiness!" The king then paid a visit. He paid his respect to monks. But the monk who came from the forest, on the other hand, kept saying, "What a happiness! What a happiness!" He didn't even take the time to greet the king and pay him proper respect. "With all my problems, as busy as I am looking after the country, I take time out for a visit, and this monk does not respect me enough to even recognize me," he thought to himself. How insulting. Why he appears to be so happy. Does he spend all of his time lying around like this? The master's response was, "Let me reveal the source of his joy. Few people are aware of it. He was once a king, as wealthy and powerful as you. He was then enrolled as a monk, and abandoned his throne. Now he thinks his previous happiness pales in comparison to his current bliss. He was surrounded by armed guards who guarded and defended him in the past. He doesn't need armed guards now that he's alone in the forest with nothing to fear. He no longer has to be concerned about wealth that needs to be safeguarded. Instead of worrying about money, or being afraid of responsibility, his wisdom protects him and others." He achieves so much inner peace from meditation that he can't help but shout, "What a happiness! What a happiness!" The king fully understood and took some advice from monks. He paid them respect and returned to the palace. After paying his respects to his master, the happy monk, who had once been a king, returned to the beautiful forest. The master lived out his days, died, and was reincarnated in a place of high heaven. The moral of the story is, happiness increases when one is unattached by wealth and power.